In order to be able to pick up where we left off, which is a Tosfot on Daf Lamed Amud Aleph, I want to be able to see the Gemara that is the continuation on Lamed Amud Aleph of what we were looking at previously. We had stopped at a certain point in the Gemara. We actually need the next portion of the Gemara in order to understand Tosfot. So step one tonight will be moving ahead in the Gemara. Step two will be to go back to a Tosfot we were talking about 2 weeks ago and hopefully to make some headway in it. I have 3.5 pages worth of notes trying to explain it and put it in some semblance of order. So to just refresh everyone's memory, and I don't want to take too much time doing this, but we're up to the point in the Gemara where we have talked about Rabbi Yochanan's view, and then we have the view of Shmuel. Basically, they're arguing about whether or not there is a concept of mitzvah haba ba'avera that's applicable here. Everyone seems to hold there's something called mitzvah haba ba'avera. The question is, what's its scope? And we're going to explore it a little more tonight. But in order to do that, let's go into the Gemara further along on Lamed Amud Aleph. So if just to think about it, Rabbi Yochanan had his position stated. His position was stated a second time. It's actually Rabbi Yochanan, the name of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. I'm calling it Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan is the part plukta to Shmuel. And then we had Shmuel saying that that actually there's a distinction to be made between the first day and other days, and there's no mitzvah b'avera on the other days. Supposed to be Yochanan held that there is such a thing. Okay, so now comes the next Gemara. It's Rav Huna. So this is 3 lines up from the bottom on 30a. The last word on the line. Amar lahu Rav Huna lahanu avankari. Ki zavnito asa me'akum lo tigzizu atun el igzizua inhu v'yavu lechu. Rav Huna told the sellers of goods, they were like basically peddlers, that they should be careful. These people, the Avankari, Rashi calls them merchants, but they sold all different kinds of small goods, needles, different kinds of I don't know what you could call them. Things you would find today, you'd say in a dollar store. Like little things, little makalach, not major appliances.
In Hebrew, we say sidkiyot. Samech dalet kuf, sidkiyot. When you say little pitchkis.
Pitchkis, that's what it is.
Sundries.
Listen, don't be the ones to go cut the hadassim from the ground.
Right.
Rather, you let the non-Jewish people do the cutting, non-Jewish sellers. They'll sell it to you. And you be retailers, but you can't be wholesalers that you went out to the field. The question is, why? And the Gemara explains, V'yavu should give it to you my time. What's the reason? Stam of the kochavim gazlane arata ninhu. The idolaters typically have stolen the land that they're on. Rashi, B'shema otokarkim Yisrael hava, we're worried that the land belongs to a Jewish person. Now the truth is the Rishonim dispute how to understand this line. Is it in all circumstances or only in a place like Eretz Yisrael? So you have on one side of the ledger the psakim of Rabbi Yitzchak or Zarua, who holds that this law applies only in a place where it's Rov Yisrael, where most of the people who live there are Jewish, either in Eretz Yisrael or even in Chutz La'aretz. It's a Jewish neighborhood. Most of the land, even the land owned by non-Jews, could have not non-Jews, but idolaters particularly, right? Because they didn't have necessarily the same morality. They might have taken the land from the Jewish people. And next page, the karka eina nigzelet. Land cannot be stolen. What does that mean? Look at the top Rashi over here. The karka eina nigzelet. Oh, sorry, I left out a line. And that is that the Ritva and Rabbi Yoel, who's the father of the Ra'avya, again, the whole thing, but basically the Rashba quotes from Rabbi Yoel, who is the father of the Rashba, of the Ra'avya, that it's actually, this is a concern, even that the people who own the land now don't really own it. They stole it maybe from non-Jews. That would also be a problem. By the by, we maintain there's a discussion from a halachic vantage point. It's obviously wrong, ethically, morally, chil Hashem, etc., to steal from a non-Jewish person. The question is, back and forth, is it considered an act of thievery in the same way as stealing from a fellow Jew? The short answer is yes, it is, but it's at least up for discussion. So according to the Ritva, Rabbi Yoel, quoted by the Rashba, yeah, it means that the idolaters, who are typically the ones whose land you will find hadassim on, may not be the actual owners. They might have stolen it from another non-Jewish person, but that's still a problem of the thievery component. But land cannot be stolen. Look at Rashi now, page Lamed Amud Bet 30b. Kolomar eina kenuya legazlan b'shum bYeush. The thief cannot acquire it, regardless of how many times the owner says they have abandoned hope of retrieving it. Why? Because when it comes to land, we have the principle of chazaka. Chazaka means the legal. I'm missing the word. The legal assumption, the legal fact that this belongs to the person who was the original owner. We learned this in Parak in Parak Gozel and Batra in Baba Kama, right? But once the fruit is cut off from the land, that's now an object you've taken off the land. That's stealing. Who goes low. So in other words, the land itself, because of the rules of land, is not possible to be stolen by dint of someone else squatting on it, except if they've been there for 3 years, the whole story. But let's say they just got there. They came there within a year. They're sitting on the land. The land does not belong anymore to them just because they claim they were there for 6 months, 8 months, 2 years. Doesn't matter till you get to 3 years. Then things change. The chazaka changes. So during that period, though, if someone cuts something off the land, a fruit or a branch off the land, that person's the thief, because the person who is squatting has not actually really divested the original owner of their ownership claim. And therefore, we're saying they should cut it off. Ligzizua inhu, they should cut it. So that when they pick it, and they're guilty of thievery, the owners of the land will not have bYeush over their land, but they will have bYeush on these objects. And then what will happen? So then after that, so Vishinu Harashut bYadaychu, once that happens, that you have purchased it from them, you, the avankari, these sellers, you've fixed it, because now there was bYeush of the owners, and there was a shinu reshut. You became now the new owners of it because you bought it off of these people who did the cutting itself. So the Gemara says, yeah, but wait a second. Sof. Okay, all said and done. Ki gazu avankari leheve bYeush bailim biyadayu b'shinu hareshut biyadon. So yeah, but let's say the avankari, these merchants, went, Jewish merchants. That's who Rav Huna was talking to. That's who he had influence with, right? They go, let's say they did cut the hadassim off. Now, as soon as they cut it off, so they're guilty, but there was bYeush bailim at the moment that they took it. Then they gave it over to someone else. Namely, they sold it to you, to me. We're the people who are going to use it in our lulav and etrog. Okay, so there was bYeush, and there was a sheni reshut. So the Gemara clarifies, no, ki gaza vankari, lo tzricha behoshana da vankari gufayu. So no, this is necessary. He taught the avankari this because the avankari themselves were not going to sell it. They wanted to be able to themselves use it in their dalad minim. In other words, Rav Huna said to the people who are the sellers of various kinds of small goods, I know that you're going to want to talk to your wholesaler and you're going to want to get the hadassim as well. Don't cut it off on your own, because then you're the person who cut it off. You're guilty of thievery. Let them, the non-Jewish, the idolaters, cut it. You'll buy it from them, and then it will be fixed when it's already in your hands. Follow? Because if the avankari were going to sell it to someone else, so the truth is that other person would not be subject to mitzvah b'avera. I should have mentioned earlier, and I'm talking a mile a minute, but there's so much to do here. The reality is that obviously is not like an instruction or prescription. You should steal hadassim from someone. Yeah. The question at hand is, we're trying to understand, is there something called mitzvah b'avera? Or in another plane of discourse, which is related to mitzvah b'avera, is, well, do you actually own this object, or is it still someone else's? You have to own the dalad mina. Huna told the avankari, what we're up to now, he told them, you should be the ones for yourselves not to be cutting the hadassim off, because you don't know if that land is really owned by someone who doesn't want to permit you to do it, and that would be thievery. But the Gemara goes on and says, wait a second, right? So what about the fact that once they have cut it from the ground, which is the moment of taking it from the owner of the land, that's step one, which will lead to a bYeush balim, the owners will give up. But number two is that this hadas will be, or hadas in plural, will be put into the dalad minim with the other two, with the aravot and the lulav. When they do that, there's a shinui mas, it made an eged. Now we call it, now it's got you've changed it, yeah, as an object. It's not just stam, few branches. Now it's wrapped in a bundle. You incorporate. It's like a person stole plywood and built it into the building. Kasavar lulav ein sarich eged. No, Rav Huna was of the opinion, it's a machloket, like the Chachamim maintain, that a lulav does not actually require an eged. Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's a mitzvah, but a mitzvah means you should do it. The Chachamim say, yeah, fine, but it's not going to be a chova. If you didn't do it, it's not going to be li'ikuva. So therefore, it's not really necessary, i.e., technically, you could pick up the lulav and the hadassim and the ravat in your hand. You don't have to actually wrap them up. So there's no shinui masa, nothing tying it.
Isn't that how we paskin b'di'evet actually?
Yeah, yeah.
You don't need an eged.
Correct. But listen, then the Gemara says, okay, look, even if you want to claim lulav tzarich eged, even if you want to say that it does require an eged, shinui echos libriyatohu. It's a change that could be reversed. Right? Because the hadassim don't look different. Right? You put them in the little basket, right? The sheet of others, the Rambam and others, you literally tie it together. Yeah, but you could clip the tie and then you have your hadassim again. It's not really a shinui. So the Gemara says, okay, what about the fact that the name of these hadassim changes? It was called Asa before. The Meikara Havale Asa Bahashta. Now what's it called? Hoshana Karule. Right? Now they call it something different. Meikara Nami La'asa Hoshana Karule. The Gemara answers, no. The Asa, even by itself, is already called a Hoshana. Now what's the Hoshana? It's the words that are spoken, Hoshana, when you're going around in a circle, yeah? But you're holding on to a bundle that is now colloquially referred to as the Hoshana. Look at Rashi, top of Lamed Aleph, Al Shem Shiragim LaOgdan LaHoshana B'Chag. The minhag, that which was common, they would take the hadassim and they would wrap it together for the Hoshana, i.e., it had a purpose, these three, not just for the mitzvah of lifting it and shaking it around. Kaven to Ugbe, Nafak Bey, right? As Art was pointing out, if it wasn't an eged, so you just lifted it up, it's done. But they were ragil, even though we maintain as a matter of pure halacha, one does not require an eged. Yeah, but they were ragil to put it all together, so they call it the Hoshana, and therefore they started calling the hadassim themselves were called the Hoshana. I'm trying to think of an analogy. I'm sure we could come up with one, which shouldn't be too hard, of different kinds of things that they just take on like another name colloquially. It's not really what it's called, but we use that expression, just a popular expression, for whatever it is.
You get to some consumer products, talk about a Kleenex.
Good.
It's a tissue.
Yeah. The brand took over. Right. Band-Aid, Kleenex.
Right. I got to Xerox something.
Within a shul context, right. The word duchanin. Mm-hmm. They're standing on the duchan. There's a platform.
Right.
But the act of what they're doing is called the duchanin. I mean, it's not really, but it is, because that's how everybody knows it. There are a few examples of this sort of thing, but the point of the Gemara is, we'll just stick with this. There are other examples. It's called the Hoshana. The bundle and even the elements themselves become known as the Hoshana. What's the Gemara doing here? Let's back up, because this is what we're going to need now to go back into Tosfot. And we have to do, actually, we should see Rashi. He's going to actually fill it out for us. We're talking about bYeush. Where's bYeush? What's bYeush? Is bYeush enough? Or do you need bYeush and another step? Well, what's the other step? Some kind of a change, a transformation. Transformation physical, transformation maybe of the name. The first one was transfer of reshut, means that you've sold it. So that was like another owner. So all these are different layers of what might be in the mix about, okay, when is this property not hot anymore for the purpose of using it in the mitzvah of the Dalet Minim?
Yeah, I'm if the
Is that Larry? I hear a disembodied voice suddenly.
cutting was done by
Yeah.
yes, it is.
Yeah.
If a cutting was not done by the Jew, it was done by another person. Okay,
Right.
it was done by the bad guy.
Let's
The
say.
bad guy then sold it to the Jew.
Yeah.
The cutting is deemed to create bYeush on the part of the real owner. And
Yes.
once the bYeush occurs, what I'm taking away from this is that to use your expression, the chayfetz is no longer hot. It's been cleansed. It's been chilled. And
Not just because of the cutting off from the ground. Something else has to happen to it. But this is actually our discussion, right? And this is what we're about to dive into the deep end about, is bYeush alone enough or not?
that's what I don't understand, why you need more, because if someone steals my bicycle,
Right.
and I'm in bYeush,
Right.
and the thief sells it to somebody, the purchaser, if you will, to use a legal expression, is a holder in due course. As far as he knows, he has clean title. So I don't understand why we have to go into all this.
Okay. All right. So I'll remind you from 2 weeks ago, and for those who maybe weren't on the call 2 weeks ago, this is the discussion. The discussion is when someone relinquishes their ownership rights on an object, is that all we need? Or is something else have to happen in order for there to be a proper transfer of that property to someone else? Again, I remind you, I'm not talking on an ethical plane. I'm not suggesting, so now it's fine,
Yeah, I understand.
I don't mean to leave the ethics aside. The point is, in this instance, is bYeush going to be enough? The reason why we're in this mix, and this is Sugya and Baba Kama in several places, we're going to get into it now as we go into Tosfot. You see the layers of depth. What's going on here is Rabbi Yochanan maintains that even after bYeush, remember Rabbi Yochanan on page 30a, Rabbi Yochanan says even after bYeush has taken place, even though bYeush is Koneh, that's what he seems to say on 30a, nonetheless mitzvah baba avera. So if you look back on 30a, right, you could see it on line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, line 5. Loshna leaf, line 4 to 5 on 30a. Lamed Amud Aleph. Loshna lifnei bYeush, loshna la'achar bYeush. Doesn't matter if it's before or after bYeush, right? And why? So before bYeush, we understand why. There's a pasuk. Why is it after bYeush? It's not his. What's the after bYeush? Ha Kanya bYeush says so. Ha Kanya bYeush. See the words? That's line like 6, 7, the end of the line. Ha Kanya bYeush. No, because mitzvah baba avera, therefore you still can't use it. But here's the question, Rabbi Yochanan, you think that really bYeush is enough? We got pages and pages and pages in Baba Kama. That's Tosfot's question, the bottom of 30a. We need to learn this new Gemara that we're seeing tonight of Huna in order to appreciate that the Gemara itself on the same page takes as a given that when the thief has stolen the object, it is not enough for the thief to have caused the owner to abandon hope of recovery, but something else has to happen, some kind of a transformation. That transformation can be that the thief builds it into a building or changes the object somehow, or changes the name of the object or its status, or sells it to someone else and that other person becomes the owner. Any of those things are what is necessary to affect the transfer. So Tosfot on 30a, Larry, this is exactly the question of Tosfot. Rabbi Yochanan, what do you mean bYeush is already enough to be Koneh, and we still have mitzvah baba avera, therefore you can't use that korban? bYeush is not enough to be Koneh. And therefore the first answer of Tosfot was a technical answer saying the manuscript of the Gemara that you may be looking at is probably wrong, because it has to say bYeush is Koneh with something else also. Well, what might that something else be? On the bottom of so that was the top of the page. That was 30a. That was Rabbi Yochanan. Shmuel says, no, there's no mitzvah ba'avera. And day 2 through 7, if it happens to be stolen, you could use a borrowed daled minim. So you could use a stolen one as well, basically, right? But if the shenik to the God's plus, it's still going to be okay, right? It's still permissible because stam gzela is going to be yeush bailin, right? And it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be enough. But this is the inyan. Is the stam yeush enough, or do we also require another step of some kind of shinoi, a change? Again, status, transformation of the identity, transformation of the object physically, transformation of the object through the transfer of its ownership away from the thief to some third party. And that's what Rav Huna is saying to these vendors. Don't just cut it yourselves and use it for yourselves, because it's going to have a taint on it, because the owners could not have really given up hope, on the land, and they're giving up hope on Yeush. They're despairing of ever seeing their Hadassim again. If you drove off with it in a truck, that's not enough. You need to do a shinui of some other kind. The Gemara is saying, well, you're putting it into the Eget. No, that's not going to be good enough. You're changing the name of it. No, that's not going to be enough. Well, what if they sell it to someone else? So that would be enough. But the problem is that the Avankari are cutting these Hadassim for themselves. What we see in this sugya is the issue of Yeush is not enough. We need something else. Look at Rashi with me on 30b. This will fill it out, I hope. 30b. Look at the second Rashi. Right? Let them cut it, and then they're going to give it. Let them cut it. The Ovdei Kochavim, let them give it to you. They're the ones who are stealing. You're just buying it off them. The owners, so the owners already gave up on all of the fruits at the moment that it was cut. That was the Yeush. They have a Yeush etzlam. They gave up. It transforms from their reshut to yours. Because Savar Yeush Greda Lo Kani. And the Gemara here takes as an assumption that Yeush alone is not enough to cause acquisition to happen. Aval Yeush Vishinu Reshut Kani. But if it was something as mild as, right, because transforming something's the object itself is pretty radical, right? Even transforming the status of it or the name of it, its identity has changed. But that's not what happens here. Here you just picked it up, you stole it, someone stole it, Reuven stole it, and Reuven sold it to Shimon. So now Shimon can be the rightful owner. There's not going to be a problem of it not being his. V'inami further, Kani mitzvah haba ba'avera havi. Alternatively, another answer, another approach is that maybe the Yeush is enough to be Kona. And what is Rav Huna's concern? Mitzvah haba ba'avera. Imatem techatchu min mechubar tiwatem goes lim. Rashi says you could view this in both ways. What was Rav Huna nervous about? Either that the Yeush wouldn't be good enough alone, you need also Shinei Reshut, or the fact that you're cutting it itself is going to make it a mitzvah ba'avera. The Gemara does not tell us one way or the other, which is why we're going back now to Rabbi Yochanan and saying, okay, how did you think Yeush was going to be enough that you were so sure to invoke mitzvah haba ba'avera as the problem with the korban that was already stolen and that someone already gave up on? Do I have you or did I lose you already? This is all just the Gemara itself. Now's a great time to ask and pillory me with questions before we dive into Tosfot, because that's where the pressure sort of ramps up. Okay. So here.
Let's go. Let's dive.
Let's go. Tosfot Lamed Amid Aleph. Okay. So Tosfot, the Tosfot is Ha Kanya bYeush. I'll say at the outset, in case it, those of us have been learning together already for years, so we don't usually go this far in depth. But this is a major sugya, and I want to show you as an example how many layers there are with different Gemaras and Baba Kama. Won't be able to see them inside already tonight because we just won't get through the whole thing. But let's understand what's transpiring. We already saw part of this Tosfot. The truth is, previously. The Tosfot here, note The Karina Bay, we say here, even though Ha Kanya b'Yeush, Rabbi Yochanan maintains that the person is acquired through Yeush, and therefore we need mitzvah b'avera. The Karina Bay, we use the expression, we say here, the Karina Bay mikem mishalachem. It says here lachem, but the Haggadah Bach is mikem mishalachem mashma. Mikem.
Excuse me, I don't see where you're reading from.
I'm on 30a.
Ha Kanya b'Yeush.
A Tosfot Ha Kanya b'Yeush.
The last but one Tosfot.
If you want me to maybe avail myself of the reality of where we are in the world now, thanks to COVID, so we'll turn it to our advantage, maybe. I'll just put it on the screen and I'll just do follow the bouncing ball. It might be easier for everybody because this is actually on the, we can't do this when we learn in person. So we'll pick a silver lining out from this dark cloud.
I found it.
Okay, you did
Yeah.
find it?
Yes.
Okay, whoever wants to
No,
look in
I
the
could use
Gemara,
the
look
I
in
could
your
use the
Gemara.
bouncing ball.
Whoever wants to watch me, right? Whoever wants to watch me on the screen, it's coming up on your screen. Okay. So this is the Gemara 30a. Is everyone in the same place? I'm on this Tosfot here. Ha Kanya b'Yeush. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ha Kanya b'Yeush. The Karina Bay mikem mishalachem. Mikem was because, don't get dizzy, but up here it had said Adam ki yakriv mikem. The pasuk at the beginning of Vayikra says, you have to give a korban that is yours. Amar Rachmana said, the merciful one, V'lav dideyu, it doesn't belong to you because it's before Yeush, right? And it said, El la'achar Yeush, Ha Kanya b'Yeush, after Yeush, didn't you already acquire it through Yeush? And the Gemara says no, Rabbi Yochanan says no, because mitzvah baba aveira. Tosot want to focus on what do you mean, I butchered that. These words, Ha Kanya b'Yeush. What does that mean? How could you say that? Shas Sugya, right here. So, Ukarina Bay Lachem, or Mikem rather, Mishel Lachem. Mashmat Kasav Rabbi Yochanan, Yeush Kedi Kana. He seems to be of the opinion that Yeush alone is enough to effect a kinyan. And that's why he can reach so easily for mitzvah ba avera. Yeah? The kasha, but this is challenging. The b'meruba ka'amar Rabbi Yochanan, the tashlume arba v'chamisha chiyuvei bein lifnei Yeush, bein la'achar Yeush. In the parak, very well-known parak, so it goes by that title, Meruba, in Baba Kama, Rabbi Yochanan maintains that the tashlume dalid vehei, you stole an ox or a sheep, a sheep or an ox rather, respectively. So you have to pay that penalty regardless of whether it's before Yeush or even after Yeush. However, Yeush kani, but if the abandonment by the owner of their ownership on it, because they despair of getting it back, they had Yeush, if that's enough for the thief to have acquired it, so amai chayav shalohu toveach shalohu mocher, then when the thief of the sheep and of the ox slaughters them or sells them, it's his already. The thief only is penalized to have to pay this amount if actually he doesn't really own these objects, it's still stolen, right? Another way of saying this conceptually is, how long is a stolen property still stolen property? At what point do you say, I did the wrong thing, but now this object is mine. I have to take care of that wrong thing by making restitution, but this object now belongs to me. Yeah? So, Dechi hai gavna diek hatem le'el, Rav Shesha milti de Rav de Amar kinaim b'shachiv, Rav Amar lahashmaita. When the statement was made earlier on, the same parak in the Gemara that they said in the name of Rav, that Rav holds that Yeush alone is enough to be Kona. Rav Sheshet said, when Rav said that, he was falling asleep. He was not paying attention. He was drowsy. I saw him nodding off, and he wasn't making sense. He was babbling. No, quite literally. That's what the Gemara says. He was getting up and getting up. When he taught it, it was wrong. He didn't really even mean it when he said it. V'od, further, about Gozel Batra, same Masechta. Shamina behedil Rabbi Yochanan mishmei Rabbi Yanai deshina reshut v'chakach Yeush lo kaneh. Right? We have explicitly, Rabbi Yochanan says the name of Rabbi Yanai, but he seems to say it approvingly, that if you did shinu reshut and then there was Yeush, you're not kona. It has to be Yeush, then shinu reshut, but not Yeush alone. Rabbi Yochanan only cares about sequence of 2 steps because he thinks there need to be 2 steps. So Tosfos basically say, okay, so bYeush Svarim de Garsina, there are manuscripts that actually say hacha as follows: Ha Kanya Vitula. I'm not going to make you dizzy, I hope. I'm going back up. There are some girses in the Gemara that just have Rabbi Yochanan saying Ha Kanya. El Achar bYeush, Ha Kanya, period. Doesn't have the word bYeush over here. It's missing. To show that it must be that he did several steps. Yet, why is it still not his? Mitzvah b'Avera. So Tosfos answer number 1 is, yeah, there's certain verses of the Gemara just don't have that. Now, Vafilu Garsina bYeush, even if you want to say that the word bYeush is actually in that is the correct manuscript, the one we see in our Shas that Tosfos had in front of them in most of their manuscripts, presumably. If you want to hold that, Yesh Lefarish de Ha Kanya. This is what it must mean. Ha Kanya bYeush v'shinui Hashem. When it said bYeush in the Gemara, top of page 30a, it was using language that was imprecise, but it's because it assumed when it said that we were Kona bYeush, it meant bYeush and Shinui Hashem. Now, what's the Shinui Hashem? Shinui Hashem means the change of identity. Here we have Betsy the cow hanging around in the pen. Came along a man and said, "This Betsy, I am makdish you to be a korban." Now, let's say the man who came around was not actually the owner, but someone who stole the animal and said, "Not only did I steal this animal, now I want to give it as a korban. I'm makdish it." So we generally do hold Kidamrina b'meruba hagana v'hagazlan hekdeshan hekdesh. I'm not saying they can offer the offering, but if they declare something part of the temple treasury, does that work? The Gemara says, yeah, it does. So in other words, I'm going back now, even if you want to hold that it said bYeush in the Gemara, it means Yesh Lefarish de Ha Kanya. This is what it really meant to say. It were Kona bYeush v'shinui Hashem, change of the identity of the object, the shem, the name of it, actually the label, what we call it. This status is no longer of chol, but now belongs to hekdesh. Good enough. And that's now I'm going to scroll up, so don't get dizzy, but right, that's presupposed because the story of Rabbi Yochanan was what? About a korban. So if a person, right, so we said, Shenamar, quoting from that pasuk from Malachi, you're bringing something stolen, something lame, and something that is sickly. Stolen, just like lame. Just as lame cannot be fixed, there's no corrective, so too stolen has no corrective. Doesn't matter if it's before the bYeush, doesn't matter if it's after the bYeush. Wait, it makes sense before bYeush because Adam ki yakriv mikem, says the Torah, and it doesn't belong to him. But what about after bYeush? Ha Kanya bYeush, stop. Tosfos would say, add in the words, Bishinui Hashem, because clearly this is a story about a korban. It means the ganaf, the Gazlan took it, and then they said, this is going to be a korban. So there's bYeush and Shinui Hashem. No, why can't you use that korban? It's true, he was makdish it. It can be now part of hekdesh, part of the temple treasury. We have a problem with it. But to offer it? No, impossible. Elalav. Why? Mishum dehavale mitzvah haba be'avera. A permanent taint on this object. Now,
So, Rabbi,
yeah, go ahead.
so the original start of this Tosfos where it questioned Rav Yochanan saying bYeush kidei kana, but then the example that was brought was that the teshlumi was before and after, but after the shechting and the selling would have been a shinui Hashem, right?
You're saying the case from before with the Daled and Hay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No.
Rabbi,
The point is that if it's after bYeush, let's say after bYeush, if you say bYeush is Kona alone, so a guy steals a lamb, and then when he steals the lamb, if bYeush is enough, he's not a burglar.
I understand.
He's a bandit, right? So the guy says, I'm never going to get it back. So now why do you have to pay Daled and Hay? If he shopped it or he sold it, it's his own animal. But that doesn't compute because Rabbi Yochanan holds that you do have to pay Daled and Hay before or after bYeush.
Okay.
So now, Vafilu man de amar bYeush lo kani, mishum da ha'ika bYeush v'shinui Hashem me'ikara chulin v'hashta hekdesh. Right? Even one who holds that bYeush generally is not going to be enough, right? Because but yet in this case it's Yeush and Shinui Hashem, because before it was Chulin and now it's Hekdesh. Therefore, Mitzvah Haba B'Aveira comes in to arrest the possibility that you'll say, yeah, I stole, it was wrong, Chatati Aviti Pashati, but I made recompense. What did I do? I transformed this animal status by declaring Hekdesh. Now it's totally mine. I had Yeush of the owners, and I now was Makdish it. Why can't I give it as a korban? Says Rabbi Yochanan, Mitzvah B'Aveira, because it's Mitzvah B'Aveira. That's when you apply Mitzvah B'Aveira. What Tosfot has done here to sum up is they try to explain how it could be that Rabbi Yochanan, making his argument, says almost like just flowed out of his mouth, or the Gemara said, but is based on the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan. After Yeush, didn't the person acquire it through Yeush? Didn't they acquire it through Yeush? How could they acquire it through Yeush? Right? Yeush plus Shinui Hashem. Everyone with me? This was all just layer one. We'd actually seen this Tosfot already. Okay? All right, now, next level. V'im Tomar, here comes the question. Im Kain, if this is true, so my parich hatam Abaye l'Rava to Amar Yeush Kani Midichtiv Korbanov v'lo Hagazul. So why is it that Abaye asked Rava a question? Now, what is this question? We don't have time to start looking up the whole Gemara. It's just going to take too long. But the question goes like this. If you accept the premise that when you're makdish something, that's enough for Shinui Hashem, then why did Abaye ask Rava the following question in Perek Meruba? Abaye asked as follows. He said to him, Rava, you think that Yeush is Kona. In fact, at the beginning of the Gemara and for several pages, the Gemara takes an assumption that Rava holds that Yeush is in fact Kona. So if that's what you hold, Abaye says to Rava, and you maintain that the reason why a korban cannot be brought when there was Yeush and Shinui Hashem is because of the word korbano. It's Xerah Kativ to prevent you bringing it from something that was stolen. That sounds like the fact that you needed a pasuk to prove your point proves that in fact Yeush would not be enough. And Rava answers, you know what the case is that I was talking about? When a guy stole a korban that belonged to his friend. So Ruvain had a lamb. He was makdish the lamb to be a korban. Shimon knew that. He saw there was, a tag it was wearing that said, La Hashem, and came Shimon and he stole it from Ruvain. He stole his friend's korban. That's what I meant when I said that Yeush is Kona. In that case, because it was already Hekdesh and it was already taken. And since it's already Hekdesh, now you could say it belongs now to Shimon. No, it says in the pasuk Korbano, and you can't take the korban of your friend. Abaye asked Rava this question, and the Bali Tosfot say the following. I'm telling you outside before we read it inside. But for Abaye, who argues against Rava, Abaye who holds that Yeush is not Koneh, in this case, it should be Koneh because it's Yeush and there's Shinui Hashem. But because of Mitzvah Baba Aveira, we can't use this korban. That's what Rabbi Yochanan and Gemara seems to be arguing. And if that's true, then even someone who would hold Yeush alone is not enough to be Koneh would still say that something is puzzled to be Nikrav because of Mitzvah Baba Aveira. So Shimon's going to get credit that he stole Ruvain's korban. It's a Mitzvah Baba Aveira. It's not going to work. Why is Abaye asking this is a question of Rava? In other words, even Abaye should agree that we have to invoke Mitzvah Baba Aveira in the case that Rava has concocted. Rava will hold Yeush alone as Koneh. Abaye holds you need Yeush and something else. But if that something else was already taken care of, Abaye should say that something else being a Shinui Hashem, Abaye should say to Rava, Mitzvah Baba Aveira. He didn't ask that. He didn't invoke that. Why not? Why not? So we're trying to understand, wait a second. Here was the thesis over here. Right? Even someone who holds Yeush is not enough to acquire something because you need, in a case where we have Yeush and Shinui Hashem, first it was Chol, now it is Hekdesh. So if you'll ask me, so that's how the questions always go, right? For those who are more seasoned, you know this already. We have here question number one, V'im Tomar. In this case, it's going to be like two-step. There's going to be two questions, and then here comes the answer. bYeush Lomar is going to be down here. It's frozen. It's not letting me highlight it. Okay, hopefully you see my cursor nonetheless. Yeah, bYeush Lomar. We could say the following. Yeah, so we're gonna get there, but now let's see it inside. Im Tomar, Im came my parich hatam in the sugya Masechet Bava Kama. Abai l'Rava de Amar bYeush Kani. Yirav will hold bYeush is enough to be kona. Midichtiv korbanov la gazul. The fact that it says korbanov la gazul, that's how you know you can't bring a stolen object. Why was Rava pushed into a corner to say that it's really that he stole the korban of his friend? For sure, in that case, even if he hadn't stolen his friend's korban, for sure he's kona. The thief is kona. Why? It's bYeush and Shinui. Why? Kedamrin and Hachas, we say in our Gemara. We invoke Mitzvah Vera. They didn't invoke it over there. Why not? Why not? You have bYeush, you have Shinui Hashem. So everybody, that was the thesis. Everybody holds that that's enough for something that was chol. If you make it kodesh, hekdesh, you could use it. It shouldn't be Mitzvah Vera. No, that's when you use Mitzvah Vera. It's the dog that didn't bark, so to speak, in the story of Abaye v. Rava in the Gemara and Baba Kama. Another question heaped on this. B'sof havi shmaitza, in that whole discussion back over there in Baba Kama, the diek Rava the bYeush kadi lokani. In the end, we come to a conclusion that Rava holds bYeush alone is not enough to be kona. Minichtiv korbanov lo agazul. But we have here v'ula nafkale hatam migazul dumid pisech lele takanta. We have here ula. In that case, ula uses the expression gazul dumid pisech lele takanta, i.e., in that instance, also it didn't invoke mitzvah baba avera as the reason. It's like you're waiting for them in that sugya to use mitzvah avera, and they never say it, which implies you don't need it because something else has superseded. Now, if you missed all of this machinery, here comes the punchline. Okay, here comes the punchline. We're up to it right now. bYeush Lomar. So here, pick it up. If you zoned out, you can still catch what Tosfot's saying. bYeush Lomar. Dimi to bYeush kadi kani have a shalo kodem hekdesh. If we say that bYeush alone is kona, then the object that he stole is his before he designated it to be a korban. And then there's no mitzvah to speak of. He was makdish his own animal. If that's the case, if that's true. Okay. Who's talking? I didn't hear you. Oh, is this background noise? Okay, I can't see anybody at this moment, so I hope everyone's still awake and paying attention over here. Right? We learn further along b'shmaitin in our sugya right here. This shouldn't be nochri. This is avankari. With regard to avankari, v'likninhu b'shinui Hashem mashma de'ikanule matzu nafkibe v'lo chashiv mitzvah haba ba'avera. If we say that bYeush is going to be enough, so the Gemara itself had asked about the avankari. Let the avankari be kona b'shinui Hashem. Those asa, those hadassim, the change of its name, to be calling it Hoshana. So if we could arrange for that to have been the case, there was bYeush and Shinui Hashem. So here come the avankari. They go to the field. They're Jewish themselves. They cut it, but they change its name because the asa is going to be called Hoshana. So we have bYeush and we have a Shinui Hashem. If you hold bYeush is enough to be kona, so certainly, when it has the Shinui Hashem as well, it's going to work. There's no mitzvah of avera anymore. Aval, however, bYeush kadi lokani, by the hekdeshen karkani le, the bYeush v'shinui Hashem hashta az chashiv mitzvah haba avera. This is the thesis line. If you have a Gemara in front of you and you want to use a highlight, a pencil, this is the line. This is the sentence. Tosfot maintain that if you hold that bYeush is not enough, but at the moment when you're makdish it, that's when you're acquiring it. So there's going to be bYeush and Shinui Hashem happening. That is mitzvah haba ba'avera. The only way you could have mitzvah baba avera for Tosfot is that the moment of the Shinui Hashem coming after the first is bYeush, and then the Shinui Hashem, which is supposed to be being makdish this for a mitzvah. Now that's a mitzvah baba avera. But if there was a way that you could acquire this object without it being related to mitzvahs, so for instance, if you cut off the Hoshanot, let's say we paskined, which we don't. Let's say we paskined like Rabbi Yehuda, the lulav tzarich eget. So now you put it in, and let's say that it's not a shinui achoz lebriato. It's not something that could be reverted. You steal plywood, okay? You steal plywood, and you build a sukkah out of the plywood, and it's before Sukkot. So there's no mitzvah yet. So now when Sukkot starts, is it a mitzvah baba avera? No. You know why? Because when you built it, it wasn't a dvar mitzvah yet. The point of Tosfot here is, if you could contrive a scenario where your act of thievery is not coterminous, like it's not the exact instant that it is becoming the object of mitzvah, then there's no mitzvah baba avera.
So if I'm a citron salesman
Yeah.
and I cut out 1,000 citrons in July, and then comes Yom Tov, and all of a sudden there's a market for the 500 unsold ones.
Well, hold on. If you sell them, then that for sure takes care of business for Tosfot, because there's a Shini Reshut. But let's say you cut 500, a person cut 500 from that was really stolen in July. Tosfot say, let's say now, before Yontif, and that's why etrog's not a great example, by the way. Etrog's not a great example. You know why? Because the etrog object has no changes happening to it at all. But let's say the lulav, you get a box filled with palm fronds, and some of them are attached, and you start breaking them open. Yeah, it's a week before Sukkot, so now it's not an object of mitzvah yet. It's a regular object. You changed it now. Oh, now it's yours. So that's Tosfot's view. There's no taint on this object. Did you do the wrong thing that you stole? You did the wrong thing. You have to make restitution. But can you use it for your mitzvah now? Yeah, sure. The only time it would be a mitzvah of avera, it's a very limited case for Tosfot, is when the items acquisition to becoming yours, the second step, bYeush is 1, and 2 is the Shinui Hashem. I'm makdish it now to be part of the mitzvah. I'm makdish this korban. Okay, that's a mitzvah of avera, because your act of acquisition is at the exact instant that acquisition through ill-gotten gains is the exact instant that you're trying to sacralize. So now keep going in Tosfot. V'kula shmaitin d'lochash mitzvah baba avera heicha dekani le matzinin lemeimar dekani kodem ba'aguda. So in the rest of the learning here, what we learned tonight, our Gemara tonight, where you didn't invoke mitzvah ba'avera too much, why didn't you hear that word spoken every 2 seconds? Oh, because if you could have found a way to acquire it beforehand, kodem, dekani kodem ba'aguda, that you wrapped it up. Even someone who doesn't hold that it is li'ikuva, you don't need it. But if you did it, that's a nice thing. So Ha Kanya kodem yomtiv. Dakati lo chal chiyuv. I can't highlight. I know it's given up on me. But you see where I'm pointing. Yeah. Dakati lo chal chiyuv mitzvah. Because there's no mitzvah yet. The mitzvah has not come into effect yet. So if you did something to the object to change it, to make it part of this thing called an eged now, great. It's yours. No mitzvah avera. This Tosfot it states that the category of mitzvah baba avera is extremely narrow. Other Rishonim, which we won't get into tonight, have a much more expansive view. Much more. That's not for tonight. Come back next week. We'll move forward, and the Gemara will do more. But the Tosfot goes on here. The inami further. Afilu b'Yom Tov. Even if it's on Yom Tov itself that you made this eged. It's not the same thing as where you took the lamb that you stole and said, how will I finish acquiring it? Well, step 1 was I caused the guy to despair. Step 2, I need to do something to it, but I'm not going to give this a blemish or I don't know what, shave it or something. I'm just going to say, you, little Shepsela, are my korban. I'm giving you as a korban. Boom, that's mitzvah baba avera. So that's right. That's the basic thesis. Now, I'm way over time. The rest of Tosfot now, I'll just tell you kind of outside, because there just won't be enough time if we try to do it inside. but basically as follows. There's a Gemara in Baba Kama on Kufya Daled. And in that Gemara, there's a machloket about what happens if you steal skins like hides, okay? Without getting into all of the details, let's just say it's hides that are susceptible to becoming tameh, become ritually impure. How? Through machshava of all things. How is that possible? Just thinking about it? I don't want to get into it at the moment. Here's what we need for our purposes. The Gemara makes a distinction. I think Chuck was the one who asked me about this, maybe in this year, maybe it was offline. So this is for you, Chuck. Geneva versus Gezela. In the case of Geneva, where it's burglars, the owners didn't give up on the object that was stolen. Why? They rationalized as follows: if the thieves were too scared to be caught, it means that they're on the lam. Pardon the pun. They're running. They're scared. That means that they're scared they're going to get hauled into court, which means they feel that the law has some hold on them, which means there's a chance I will recover my object. However, in the case of Gezela, where it's not burglars, but brigands, it's actual robbers, a gang shows up and grabs it. So these people don't care about the law. They're not worried about being caught. They're not worried about their identity. Masks or not, they don't care. They flouted the law. So they're the bYeush of the Bailim. The Gemara distinguishes Saksha Machlok between Rabbi Shimon and the Rabbanan about the case of Geneva versus Gezela. Everyone seems to maintain, however, that bYeush alone would be enough. So that is a fly in the ointment against Tosfot's thesis, that in the end, everyone comes around to saying it's bYeush plus some other step for a thief to acquire an object. The answer the Gemara here, Tosfot here gives is that there was bYeush and there must have been a Shinu Hashem as well, that the object that was stolen was a raw hide and it was being made in some kind of saddle, and therefore the name changed from Mashcha, which is the raw, to Avarza, which is some kind of a saddle or some such thing. Then Tosfot would say there's another Gemara we have to contend with. Gemara Baba Kama Tzadi Daled. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov gives the case that we actually parsed. We talked about this case as well. A person steals a bag of wheat. They bake the wheat into bread. Now they want to make a bracha and be mafrish challah. Botzea berech ne'etz Hashem. A person who wants to make a bracha is not making a bracha. They are blaspheming to invoke God's name. Wait a second. That's a mitzvah baba avera? How could it be a mitzvah baba avera? Person stole wheat. What do they do with the wheat? Ein lecha transformation gedola mizu. A shinui that was kona. You transformed it into an object. It's not wheat anymore. It's bread. Despite that, we say mitzvah baba avera. That's what Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says. Mitzvah baba avera, and that's going to be enough. Even though there's shinui kona, and even though you transformed it before there was even a chiyuv chal. Remember Tosfot's whole point again. In Tosfot, if I can get it up on a board here again. bYeush kedi lo kani v'deikdeshin kakani le dika bYeush v'shinu Hashem hashta. Az chashi mitzvah has to be the exact instant. So it tells us that, yeah, but the guy stole wheat and he made it into dough. When's the chiyuv challah? Only once it became dough. So it really got transformed. Then came the chiyuv challah after, and then he wants to take the challah and make a bracha. So there's the two-step of how he acquired it. Then the chiyuv started, but he wasn't makdish the bread. He didn't designate this as the challah, because there wasn't a chiyuv challah till he transformed it. He stole. There was a despair of the owner, and then he transformed it. Now, after he transformed it, there's a new chiyuv called challah. So why shouldn't he be allowed to do it? Oh, we said mitzvah baba avera. Yeah, but okay. Why is it mitzvah baba avera? The challah should belong to him. Tosfot's thesis is it's only mitzvah baba avera where the act of acquisition is associated with the moment that you're trying to sacralize and make into a religious moment. Chas v'shalom, that's mitzvah baba avera. So Tosfot answer, listen, the same page Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov makes this point that we invoke mitzvah baba avera. It's pushed off. It's explained away that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is only talking about the bracha itself is the problem. The bracha itself is the issue. He's not talking, that's the mitzvah baba avera, but not the action of being mafrish t'chala. Alternatively, the fact that the bracha means a haskarat shem shamayim, to talk about what we talked about a little while ago about being mazkir shem shamayim on things, that's the mitzvah baba avera. According to that, if we hold all of this, So Tosfot sew it up. It says a sheet of Ula, where in one place Ula holds bYeush lo Kani, another place Ula holds bYeush Kani. We have to reconcile the whole thing. And basically, Tosfot say, go look up the sugis and Baba Kama. We can't tell you all of this now on one page, which doesn't leave us entirely satisfied, but it gives you a window of how much is going on here between all the different parts. So what we saw tonight was, number one, we went further in the Gemara of a case of Rav Huna telling the merchants, be careful not to be over on stealing when you want to acquire your hadassim. Rather, you should make sure that you actually have properly acquired them so they can be part of the Daled Minim. There were theses going back and forth about different ways you could be Kona. Nobody said bYeush alone will be Kona. Everybody assumed in that Gemara you need some other component. Tosfot grabbed onto that and said, wait, but let's look on 30a. We have Rav Yochanan on the top of the page seemingly saying bYeush alone is Kona. And they said, well, no, not really. bYeush alone is not Kona. It's bYeush plus Shinui Hashem. And the point of Tosfot was, in the end, you need bYeush and Shinui Hashem as the exact moment that is the blaspheming moment of, and I want to make it a korban. That's how you did it? No, that's been Mitzvah Bavera. They have a very limited view of when you would invoke this concept. And by the by, it explains how it is that Shmuel on the same page says, this isn't the case of Mitzvah Bavera. He can so easily dismiss it, at least Aliba the Tosfot, because he thinks it's really a very narrow and limited application, and it's not clear that it applies to this situation of the lulav that a person stole on Sukkot that they want to use days 2 through 7. Whew. Okay, now it's 9 o'clock. We spent 45 minutes. Tonight was an hour. I had to make up for last week. So, okay.
We don't paskin like Tosfos, do we?
Pardon?
We don't paskin like Tosfos.
No, not. Let's say not. They have it's a very limited view, and Rabbeinu Tam disagrees with them. With the Tosfot here, this is probably the Rabbeinu Tam has his own shita, more expansive. We'll see some other approaches. Maybe I'll say maybe one other, so I have like a counterweight for next week. But then, of course, I do want to go ahead in the Gemara. If you were perchance a little bit lost tonight, it's because we were going through different sugyas in Baba Kama. We've been talking about this for weeks, but we're pulling up stakes. And next week we'll see maybe like one other thing in Mitzvah Baba Avera, and then we're pushing off further along in the Gemara, and we will probably not drop anchor on Karka and Nigzel, even though you looked at 30b. And whenever you see there's very little Gemara and tons of Tosfot, you know there are meaty sugyas there. But this isn't supposed to be a totally b'iyun shir, just partially. So I have to somehow balance it. Wish everyone a Chodesh Tov. Thanks for joining the call. Next week, Monday night, 8 o'clock. Looking for, one last thing, programmatic note. Someone already hung up. I'm gonna probably have to end up changing the address. So on Thursday, when you see the log, like the press here for the share, it's not this one, it's another one. And I'll send it a reminder. Sarah asked me to switch over to another channel to keep the main channel open, apparently. So I'm going to oblige her, but I didn't want to surprise anybody. So that's going to be next week. You'll get a reminder. Don't worry. Okay. Ad Kan. Laila Tov.